The city lights flickered through the windows as people moved in and out of the downtown area. The sidewalks were full of life, some heading home, some heading out to eat, and others just walking with their heads down, lost in thought. In the heart of this busy city was a restaurant that looked like it belonged on the cover of a luxury magazine. Tall glass doors, soft lighting inside, elegant tables, and a menu that promised something special for every guest. But behind the polished surface, things weren't as perfect as they seemed. Inside the building, the staff was preparing for another evening. Plates were being stacked, wine glasses cleaned, and uniforms adjusted one last time before the first customers arrived. Music played softly in the background, but no one was really listening. Everyone had their own worries. Outside, a man walked slowly toward the restaurant. He wore a simple jacket and jeans, not flashy clothes, nothing that would draw attention. He looked like any other customer looking for a good meal. But he wasn't just anyone. He was the owner. Not just any owner. This was the man who started everything. Years ago, he had built this place from the ground up. What began as a small idea had grown into a chain of restaurants across the country. His name didn't appear on the menus or the signs, but his decisions shaped everything, from how the food was made to how the staff was treated. That night, though, he wasn't here to check reports or talk to managers. He was here to see what real life was like in one of his own restaurants. Not the version managers showed him during visits, but the truth, the real experience of both the guests and the workers. He stepped inside and was greeted by a hostess who smiled politely and asked if he had a reservation. He said no and was led to a table near the back, away from the main crowd. As he sat down, he looked around carefully. He noticed little things: a waiter rushing between tables without a break, a cook peeking out from the kitchen with tired eyes, a cleaner wiping the same spot over and over, maybe just to stay busy. He opened the menu and glanced at the prices. Higher than he remembered. He wondered if regular people still came here often, or if it had become more of a place for business meetings and special occasions. A young waiter approached him. He looked tired, but friendly. His name tag didn't have a name, just a smiley face drawn in marker. That told the owner something right away. Either the staff rotated too fast for new tags, or they didn't care enough to print them. "Welcome," the waiter said with a small smile. "Can I get you something to drink while you look over the menu?" The owner nodded and asked for water. No need to start with anything fancy. He wanted to keep things simple so he wouldn't stand out. As the waiter walked away, the owner watched him. He moved quickly but carefully, like he was trying to balance speed with politeness. He checked on other tables while waiting for the water to arrive. He wiped a spilled napkin off a seat and gave a thumbs up to a cook who sent out a dish late. There was something about him, an effort to do well even when things weren't easy. When the water came, the owner took a slow sip and continued watching. He saw how long it took for orders to be taken, how many times the waiters had to ask guests to repeat themselves because they were distracted or overwhelmed. He noticed that the music was louder than it should be, making conversation hard. And he noticed that even though the staff tried to smile, most of them looked worn down. This wasn't what he had imagined when he started all this. He had always believed in creating a place where people could enjoy great meals and feel welcome, where employees could grow, learn, and earn a fair living. Somewhere along the way, maybe that vision had gotten lost in numbers and profits. He knew that corporate reports painted a picture of success: high sales, good reviews, strong branding. But those reports didn't tell the whole story. They didn't show the exhaustion in a waiter's eyes or the quiet frustration of someone working extra hours just to make ends meet. Tonight, he wanted to hear the real stories. He ordered a simple meal. Not the most expensive item, not the cheapest either. Just something average. He wanted to know if the quality matched what customers paid. He also wanted to see how the waiter handled a regular customer versus someone who might spend more. As the food arrived, he studied the waiter again. This time, he struck up a conversation. "You work here often?" he asked casually. The waiter smiled, a bit surprised. Most customers didn't ask questions like that. "Every day," he replied. 6 days a week, usually 2 shifts. The owner raised an eyebrow. That was a lot. "That must be tough," he said. The waiter shrugged. It is, but bills don't pay themselves. There was a pause. The waiter looked around, then leaned in slightly. My mom isn't doing well, he said quietly. I'm trying to keep her in a place where she can get help, but it's expensive. The owner listened without interrupting. I try to make it work, the waiter continued. But sometimes, I wonder if I'm just holding on to something. That's slipping through my fingers. The owner felt a lump in his throat. He had heard similar stories before, but never like this. Never face to face. Never from someone serving him directly. He realized that this wasn't just one person's problem. It was part of a bigger issue, one that his company had somehow ignored or overlooked. For the rest of the meal, he ate slowly, thinking more than eating. He watched the waiter move from table to table, smiling even when he looked exhausted. He saw how other workers helped each other out, sharing tips, covering breaks, trying to support one another despite the pressure. By the time he finished, he had made a decision. He wasn't going to leave tonight like a normal customer. He was going to come back tomorrow, and this time he wouldn't be hiding. The next evening, the restaurant was just as busy as it had been the night before. The same soft lights, the same elegant tables, the same smell of herbs and grilled meat drifting from the kitchen. But for the man who walked in quietly through the front door, everything felt different. He wasn't just watching anymore. Tonight he was here to understand. He wore the same clothes as the night before. Jeans, a plain jacket, nothing that would make him stand out. He wanted to be treated like any other customer. He wanted to hear what people said when they didn't know who he really was. He was seated at the same table near the back. The same waiter came over. It was clear from the start that the young man remembered him. There was a flicker of recognition in his eyes, but he didn't say anything, just smiled and asked if he wanted water again. The owner nodded and thanked him. As the waiter walked away, the owner looked around. The energy in the room was different tonight, quieter, more tense. A few waiters seemed stressed, rushing between tables with tight smiles. One dropped a plate by accident and quickly cleaned it up without saying a word. When the waiter returned, the owner decided not to waste time. You've got a lot on your mind, he said gently. The waiter gave a tired smile. Yeah, he admitted. Sometimes I feel like I'm just trying to keep my head above water. The owner leaned in slightly. What's going on? The waiter hesitated for a second, then glanced around to make sure no one else was listening. My mom's condition is getting worse, he said quietly. I can't afford the care she needs, and every extra hour I work feels like I'm running in place. His voice was steady, but there was pain behind it. I try not to complain, he added, but sometimes when I come home late and see her sitting there, not even recognizing me most days, I don't know how much longer I can do this. The owner sat still, letting the words sink in. He had heard stories like this before, on reports in meetings during interviews. But hearing it face to face from someone who didn't know who he was made it real in a way it never had been before. He thought about all the decisions he had signed off on, cutting staff hours, reducing benefits, pushing for higher sales targets. They had made sense on paper, but now sitting across from someone living the consequences, those decisions felt cold and distant. Have you talked to anyone at work about this? He asked. The waiter shook his head. There's no one to talk to, he said. We're too busy just keeping up. And honestly, most people don't want to hear it, they just want us to do our job. There was bitterness in his voice, but not anger, more like sadness that had built up over time. The owner looked around again. He noticed how fast the workers were moving, how little time they had to breathe between tasks. He saw the way some avoided eye contact with guests, not because they were rude, but because they were overwhelmed. This wasn't just about one waiter. It was about all of them, and it was about him. He realized something important. He hadn't been seeing the full picture. He had trusted numbers and reports to tell him how things were going, but numbers couldn't show exhaustion. Reports couldn't explain heartbreak. As the waiter walked away to check on another table, the owner sat quietly, thinking. For years, He had believed that building a successful business meant growing bigger, faster, and more profitable. But maybe success wasn't just about growth. Maybe it was about care, about support, about making sure the people who kept the business running weren't left behind. That night, he didn't eat much. His food sat mostly untouched. Instead, he watched, listened, thought. And by the time he left, he knew he couldn't walk away like he had before. Something had to change. Not tomorrow. Now. The night was ending. The restaurant lights were dimmed a little lower and the noise had quieted down. Fewer people were left at the tables, and those who stayed were either deep in conversation or finishing their meals slowly. Outside, the city still buzzed, but inside, there was a tired kind of peace settling over everything. The owner sat quietly at his table, watching the staff move around one last time before closing. He noticed how some leaned against the walls when they thought no one was looking, how others shared quiet words with each other, like soldiers checking in after a long day of battle. His waiter came by again, wiping his hands on a small towel. "Everything okay?" the waiter asked, noticing the untouched plate. The owner nodded, then looked up at him. "I've been thinking," he said, "about what you told me." The waiter gave a soft smile, not quite sure where this was going. "Yeah?" he asked. "Most people forget about stuff like that once they leave the restaurant." The owner shook his head. "I don't want to forget," he said. "I can't forget." There was something different in his voice now. Not just curiosity, but real concern. Real care. He gestured for the waiter to sit for a moment. Just for a minute. Not as a customer and worker, but as two people trying to understand each other. Getting. First, the waiter hesitated. Rules were rules, you didn't sit with customers. But something about the man across from him made him feel safe enough to break that rule. So he did. "What's it like?" the owner asked gently. "Being here every day?" The waiter let out a slow breath. "It's hard," he admitted. "We're always short-staffed. When someone calls in sick, we all have to pick up the slack. And if sales are low, management cuts our hours. If sales are high, we're too busy to even take a break." He rubbed his eyes. "And the tips. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not. But either way, I can't plan around them. Rent doesn't wait. Bills don't wait. Neither does my mom's health." The owner listened without interrupting. "I used to think working here was a step up," the waiter continued. "That maybe I could grow into something more. But most people don't stay long enough to get promoted. They burn out or quit because they can't afford to keep going." He paused, then added, "And honestly, some of us don't even feel seen." The owner felt a tightness in his chest. He had built this business to be something special, to give people jobs, to bring joy through food, to create places where people could gather and feel good. But somewhere along the way, that dream had gotten buried under numbers and targets. Now sitting face to face with someone who worked so hard just to survive, he realized the truth. It wasn't just the system that needed fixing, it was him. He looked at the waiter and asked, "What would make things better?" The young man thought for a moment. "More than money," he said. "We need time, we need rest. We need to know that if something happens, like a sick parent or a broken car, we won't lose everything just because life gets complicated." He looked around the room. "We need someone to actually listen," he added. "Not just pretend to, not just read reports, but really hear us." The owner nodded slowly. "I'm listening," he said. The waiter smiled faintly. "That means more than you know." Just then a manager walked past and gave the waiter a look. Time to get back to work. The waiter stood up, tucking the towel into his apron. "I should go," he said. "Thanks for hearing me out." The owner reached out and touched his arm lightly. "You've done me a bigger favor than you know," he said. As the waiter walked away, the owner sat there for a while longer, letting everything sink in. He thought about all the restaurants under his name, all the workers like this waiter, trying their best, barely getting by, feeling invisible. He thought about the meetings he had missed with real employees, the voices he hadn't heard, the stories he hadn't known. That night, he didn't go. home right away. Instead, he waited until the restaurant closed. He watched the workers clean tables, stack chairs, and pack up leftover food. He saw how some helped each other carry heavy bins outside, how others hugged before parting ways, not just as co-workers, but as friends who had survived another day together. When the last light went off, he stepped outside and took a deep breath. The air was cool. The streets were quieter now, but inside him something was starting to heat up. A fire, a purpose. He knew what he had to do. Tomorrow he wouldn't just be visiting another branch or reading another report. Tomorrow, he would start changing things, for everyone, because tonight had shown him something powerful. Behind every dish served, every drink poured, every smile forced through exhaustion, there was a person, a real person, with real struggles and real dreams. And it was time he started seeing them, all of them. The next morning, the restaurant was quiet. The lights were off, the tables bare, and the smell of last night's meals had faded. Outside, the city was waking up again, people rushing to work, kids heading to school, coffee shops opening their doors. But inside this restaurant, something unusual was about to happen. The owner arrived early before anyone else. He wasn't dressed like a customer anymore. He wore a clean shirt and slacks, nothing fancy, but enough to show he meant business. In his hand was a notebook, full of notes from the night before. Thoughts, observations, promises. He didn't come as a silent visitor this time. He came to speak, to listen, and to change things. When the staff started arriving, they were surprised to see him already inside. Some looked confused. Others tried not to stare. A few whispered to each other, wondering who he really was. Then he stood in the middle of the dining room and asked for everyone's attention. "I know I'm not supposed to be here," he began, "but I needed to see what life was really like for all of you." There was silence. Some workers looked at each other. Was this some kind of joke? A manager playing a role? "I've owned this restaurant for years," he said, "and many more like it across the country. But until last night, I never truly saw what it was like to work here." A few eyes widened. Now they knew. This was the boss. Not just any boss. The top one. One of the waiters, the same young man from the night before, stood near the back. His face showed shock, then something else. Relief. Maybe even hope. The owner walked over to a nearby table and placed both hands on it, like he needed to steady himself. "For too long," he said, "I've trusted reports and numbers to tell me how things are going. But those reports don't show tired eyes. They don't explain why people leave jobs they love because they can't afford to stay. They don't hear the stories of people working 2 jobs just to survive." He paused and looked around the room. "Last night," he continued, "one of you shared his story with me. Not because he wanted praise, not because he wanted special treatment. He shared it because he hoped someone would finally hear him." He turned toward the waiter standing quietly in the back. "And I did," he said. "I heard you." The room stayed silent, but now there was something different in the air. Attention, respect, belief. The owner went on. "I spent the night thinking," he said, "about everything I saw, about everything I heard, and I realized something important. This company isn't just about food, it's about people. It always has been." He took a deep breath. "But lately we've forgotten that." Some heads nodded slowly. "We've focused too much on profit," he admitted, "on speed, on pushing harder instead of supporting better. And in doing so, we've left behind the very people who keep this place alive." He looked directly at the team. "That ends today." A few workers exchanged looks. Was this real? "I'm calling a meeting," he said. "With every manager, every leader. We're going to look at our pay, our hours, our benefits. We're going to make sure no one is forced to choose between their job and their family, between working and resting, between staying healthy and just surviving." He stepped forward. "No one should feel invisible in the place where they spend most of their day," he said. "And no one should have to beg for help when life gets hard." His voice softened. "You all deserve better." That's when something unexpected happened. One of the cooks raised his hand, not to ask a question but to speak. "I've worked here for 5 years," he said. "I've seen good times and bad, and I've seen people leave because they couldn't take it anymore." He looked at the owner. "But this is the first time I've felt like someone actually cares." A few others nodded. Another worker spoke up. "We just want to be treated like people, not machines." The owner smiled gently. "That's exactly what you are," he said. "People. And I'm going to do everything I can to make sure this place feels like a home, not just a job." As the conversation continued, something shifted. It wasn't just about money or policies. It was about trust, about belonging, about being seen. Later that day, the owner met with managers and leaders from all branches. He brought his notes, he brought his heart, and he made it clear changes were coming: higher wages, better schedules, health support, mental health days, and a new program where employees could share their concerns without fear. It wouldn't fix everything overnight, but it was a start. A real one. Back at the restaurant, the young waiter watched everything unfold. He didn't say much, but his eyes told the story. For the first time in a long time, he looked like he believed things could get better. Because now someone had listened, really listened, and that changed everything. Weeks passed after that first meeting. The restaurant was still open, still serving meals, still busy most nights. But something had changed, slowly, quietly, but surely. It started with small things. Workers noticed their schedules were more balanced. They weren't being asked to work 10 straight days without a break. Some got extra hours. Others got time off when they needed it most. Then came bigger changes. Paychecks grew slightly, not by much, but enough to matter. Health benefits became clearer, more reachable. There was even a new message board in the back where anyone could write down ideas or concerns. And every week, someone actually read them out loud during staff meetings. At first, people didn't believe it would last. They'd seen promises before. Empty words. Fancy signs on the wall that said, "We value our team," while making them work until their legs ached. But this was different. This wasn't just talk. It was action. And the owner, the man who had once only watched from afar, was showing up more often. Not in suits, not with cameras. Just him, walking through the doors like he belonged. He would sit at the tables, talk to the cooks, ask the cleaners how their kids were doing. He listened more than he spoke, and when he did speak, it felt real. One morning, he called another meeting. Not just for managers this time, for everyone. The dining area was cleared out. Tables were pushed aside. The lights were soft. Everyone stood or sat in a circle. Waiters, chefs, dishwashers, hosts, janitors. A few looked nervous, others curious. One older cook even whispered, "What now?" The owner stepped into the middle and smiled. "I wanted to show you something," he said. He pulled out a folder and handed out papers. "These are updates," he explained, "from all the restaurants across the country." There were gasps as people read what was happening. Some branches had added paid sick leave. Others offered childcare support. A few even started offering free meals to workers who stayed late. One of the waiters read aloud, "Mental health days can be taken without questions." The owner nodded. "Yes," he said. "You shouldn't have to feel guilty for needing rest, for needing care." A silence fell over the room. It was heavier than sadness. It was realization that this was really happening, that someone finally saw them, not as workers, but as people. Then the owner turned to the young waiter, the one whose story had started it all. "You were the reason," he said gently. Everyone's eyes shifted. The waiter looked surprised. His face turned red. "No way," he said softly. The owner shook his head. "Yes? You were the one who opened my eyes, and I'm asking you something now." The room got quieter. "What is it?" the waiter asked. "I want you to be part of our team that helps make sure these changes stick," the owner said. "I don't know everything, but maybe if we keep listening to each other, we can build something better." The waiter stared at him for a moment. Then he nodded. "I'll do it," he said. And there, in the middle of an empty restaurant, surrounded by people who had once felt invisible, something powerful happened. Hope grew, not because of money or fancy plans, but because someone chose to care. Weeks turned into months. The changes kept coming. Turnover dropped. People weren't leaving as fast. Some workers who had quit came back. Customer reviews started to change too. More guests wrote about how kind the staff was, how warm the place felt, how the food tasted better, not because it was fancier, but because the people serving it seemed happier. The owner visited often, always listening. He watched as the young waiter slowly gained confidence. He helped train new hires, he led small group talks. He made sure no one else had to suffer in silence like he once did. One night, the owner returned for dinner again. He didn't tell anyone he was coming. He walked in like any other customer. The host greeted him. The waiter smiled. The food arrived hot. The conversation was easy. As he ate, he looked around. No one rushed, no one argued. Everyone moved with purpose, yes, but also peace. He leaned back in his chair, took a deep breath, and smiled. Because for the first time in years, he wasn't just running a business. He was building something meaningful, something that mattered, something built on care, on connection, on people. Time passed. The restaurant still stood in the same place, under the same soft lights, with the same elegant tables. But now it felt different, warmer, more alive. People came not just for the food, but for the feeling. They could sense it when they walked in. It wasn't just a place to eat anymore. It was a place where people cared, and that change had started with one man who decided to listen. He wasn't hiding anymore. He didn't sit in the back corner watching from a distance. He walked through the front doors like he belonged, because now he did. He knew everyone by face, if not by name. He remembered small things: who had kids at home, who was going back to school, who had lost someone close. And when someone looked tired, he asked how they were doing, not as a boss, but as a person who truly wanted to know. The young waiter, the one who had shared his story late one night, had grown too. He no longer carried the same weight on his shoulders. His smile came easier now. His steps weren't so heavy. He had become a leader among the team, helping train new hires, checking in on others, making sure no one got left behind. One evening, the owner sat at his usual table. The waiter came over, with a warm smile. "Same as always?" he asked. The owner nodded. As the waiter walked away, the owner looked around the room. A family laughed at a nearby table. A couple held hands across another. An older man read the menu slowly, without being rushed. Behind the scenes, workers moved with purpose, but not panic. They smiled more, spoke kindly to each other. Even the cleaner wiped down chairs with a hum, like the job didn't feel so heavy anymore. When the waiter returned with water, the owner looked up. "I've been thinking," he said. The waiter smiled. "That sounds dangerous." The owner chuckled. "Maybe, but I want to share something." He leaned forward slightly. "This place used to be about success," he said. "About numbers, profit, growth. I thought that's what mattered most." He paused. "But now I see," he went on. "Success isn't just money in the bank. It's seeing someone come in worn out and leave feeling stronger. It's knowing that the people who work here don't just survive. They live." The waiter listened quietly, eyes soft. "I used to think my job was to run a business," the owner continued. "Now I know it's to serve the people who make it possible." The waiter gave a small nod. "That means more than you know," he said. The owner smiled. Later that night, after dinner was done and the last guests had left, the owner stayed behind. He met with the team again, not in a formal meeting room, but right there in the middle of the dining floor. Lights were dimmed. The smell of herbs still lingered. Outside, the city slept. Inside, people gathered. The owner stood in front of them all. "I want to thank you," he began. Some looked surprised. "For showing me what really matters," he said. for trusting me enough to share your stories, for working hard even when it wasn't easy. He looked around the room. You taught me that leadership isn't about control, he said. It's about care, about listening, about lifting people up, not pushing them down. He took a breath. So tonight I'm not just saying thank you, he added. I'm saying this, we're not stopping here. There was a quiet energy in the air. We're going to keep learning, he said. Keep growing. Keep making this place better. For everyone. The room filled with nods, smiles, quiet claps. Then the waiter stepped forward. I just want to say something, he said. Everyone turned to him. For a long time, he began. I felt invisible, like I was just trying to get through the day, hoping nothing would break. He looked at the owner. But then someone showed up, he said. Someone actually listened, and that changed everything. He looked around the room. We're not just workers, he said. We're people. We have lives. We have families. We have dreams. He smiled. And now, he added, we have a chance to chase them. There was silence for a moment. Then, slowly the room filled with applause, not loud, not flashy, just real people, celebrating something real. As the night ended and the lights went off one by one, the owner stood by the door, watching the team leave. One by one, they said goodbye. Some shook his hand, others just smiled. And as he walked outside into the cool night air, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not because everything was perfect, because he was finally walking the path he was meant to follow. The path of care, of connection, of people. And somewhere inside he knew this was only the beginning.